Can I have the cord? Welcome everyone. There it is. So, it's been a little bit since we did this, so it might take me some time to get used to this again. But we are, we're here trying to study the Srimad Bhagavatam. I'm trying to make this smaller, but it's not working. It's okay, maybe that could help, I don't know. Alright, but we're here trying to study the Srimad Bhagavatam. There we go. And we've taken a break because we had all kinds of guests here. And it's been wonderful, but hectic, very hectic. But it was worth it. But I'm also happy that we're going back to a sense of stability again. So very nice to be back with you all online. Even nicer to be with you, Piyush and Parth, and Rishi's in the bathroom. So we're going to begin. I think before we do our Om Namos and all that stuff, I think we'll just start with the Guru prayers. So, Prathina Vaditsar. And all together.
Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
You guys in the back, that's too far. One person.
I'm back for something. I'm old.
You sit against that wall.
It's fine. I will come closer.
Yes, come the closest.
Yes.
Alright. Good. Try not to have your backs to the
Yes.
Okay. Now, so we'll begin. Now our Bhagavatam prayers. All together.
Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये.
Maybe Rishi, you can read this one.
Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam,
You? Piyush, you read this one.
okay,
Rishi, you read the
I
next one.
heard Piyush. Sorry. Go ahead, go ahead.
No, you read it.
Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of God, Narayan, unto Nar Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, Srimad Bhagavatam.
Jai. And then Shrimvatam, go ahead. Oh yeah, I did that one, sorry.
Shrinvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Vidyantasto He Bhadrani Vidunoti Shritsatam.
Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is a Paramatma in everyone's heart and benefactor of the fruitful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotees who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted.
Jai. Jai. We'll do our final one.
Treshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. By regular attendance in the classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact.
Jai. So, let's have a class on the Bhagavatam. We chanted to all the gurus to bless us. So hopefully that is the case here. We will go on forward with their blessings. And actually we're just going to mostly be reading Srila Prabhupada's Srimad Bhagavatam. So, we're going to have some good verses today. So we're on number 8. We finished by, last time, by rendering devotional service unto the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the world. And before that it was mentioned that the supreme occupation for all humanity is that by which men can attain to this loving devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. And such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. So now we're getting this was a question by the sages as to what is the most exalted thing to hear, what is the essence of all the scriptures, and this is actually the answer. That by which men can attain to loving devotional service. And then it's describing that loving devotional service and how important this is. And what one will get is you'll get knowledge without cause. Just by doing service to the Lord, He will arrange all kinds of facility for you to arise in knowledge, and also detachment from this world. You'll no longer be so attached to the things that ultimately we know maybe intellectually bring us misery, but still we're very much attached to them. Engaging the senses and eating, sleeping, mating, and defending of the temporary nature of this world. But here's the secret: by rendering devotional service unto the personality of Godhead. So if you're wondering, why have I not made advancement? Why am I still attached to this thing? Why am I not still attached to that thing? This is the answer. It's because we haven't actually rendered enough devotional service yet. And through that process, these things happen. More knowledge, and then also detachment from the world. So, like that, now we're on number 8. So, repeat after me. Dharma svanustita pumsam
Dharma swanushtipusa punsam
Vishvakshena kathasuyaha
Vishvaksena katha suryaha
Natpadayed yadiratim
Natvadedarti
Shrama eva hi kevalam.
Shrama eva hi kevalam.
Very important verse. Dharma,
dharma,
occupation,
occupation,
svanustitaha,
suvanustitaha,
executed in terms of one's own position,
executed in terms of one's own position,
pumsam,
pumsam,
of humankind,
of humankind,
vishvakshena,
vishvaksena,
the personality of Godhead,
the personality of Godhead,
or the plenary portion, or it's his expansion. Kathasu,
kathasu,
in the message of
in the message of
Yaha,
yaha,
what is,
what is,
na,
na,
not,
not,
utpadayet,
utpadayet,
does produce,
just produce,
yadi,
yadi,
if,
if,
ratim,
ratim,
attraction,
attractions,
shrama,
shrama,
useless labor,
useless labor,
eva,
eva,
only,
only,
he,
he,
certainly,
certainly,
kevalam,
kevalam,
entirely.
entirely.
All right, I'll read this one out. Translation: the occupational activities a man performs, a man could also be a woman, but a man performs according to his own position are only so much useless labor if they do not provoke attraction for the message of the personality of Godhead. So this is heavy. Let's hear Srila Prabhupada's purport, and then maybe we'll unpack it a little bit. Purport: there are different occupational activities in terms of man's different conceptions of life. To the gross materialist who cannot see anything beyond the gross material body, that's the body in its fleshy elemental nature, there is nothing beyond the senses. To the gross materialist, they cannot see anything beyond the gross material body, and there is nothing beyond the senses to them. Therefore, his occupational activities are limited to concentrated and extended selfishness. Concentrated selfishness centers around the personal body. This is generally seen amongst the lower animals. Extended selfishness is manifested in human society and centers around family, society, community, nation, and world, with a view to gross bodily comfort. Above these gross materialists are the mental speculators, who hover aloft in the mental spheres, and their occupational duties involve making poetry and philosophy, or propagating some ism with the same aim of selfishness, limited to the body and mind. But above the body and mind is the dormant spirit soul, whose absence from the body makes the whole range of bodily and mental selfishness completely null and void. But less intelligent people have no information of the needs of the spirit soul. So we see this, right? Those who are very bodily centric, people who are so bodily concerned, ultimately they're it's what's said, it's seen amongst the lower animals. They're almost like animalistic. What can I eat? Ooh, she's pretty, let me go towards her. And very, very based off the senses and bodily consciousness. And then, but above that, maybe someone, maybe they can extend their selfishness to not just themselves anymore, but like, all right, well, this is my wife, this is my family, these are my people, this is my country. Still I and mine. It's still focused around their own selfishness, but now they're reaching out a little bit. But what's the main thing? How are we going to make their bodies more comfortable and pleased? So eating, sleeping, mating, defending. The lower materialistic things. This could include building hospitals, feeding the hungry, all seemingly good things to keep the body together. But what is the point of keeping the body together? Just so it dies anyway. There has to be a deeper purpose to life. It's not just to exist and have comfort in this world. Even the pigs, the birds, the turtles, everybody is doing like this. But what is actually the higher purpose of life? And it's explained, actually everything that everyone is doing is useless labor if it doesn't provoke attraction for the message of the personality of Godhead, especially in the human form of life. The only point of humanity is to actually develop self-realization. It's the only thing that differentiates us from the animals. The animals, they eat better than we do. They have better enjoyment in eating. They have better enjoyment in sleeping. They have better enjoyment in mating. And they have better facility and enjoyment in being able to defend themselves and acquire, their needs. The only thing that human being is supposed to do is self-realization. And everything else is actually useless labor, because why? The message of Godhead is all about one, self-realization, and then realization of Him and the relationship between you and Him. So ultimately, this is the nature of the soul, that which goes above the body and mental spheres. On the mental level, people might become very poetic, philosophical, trying to create some ism or that ism, ultimately for the mental and bodily comforts of others. But those on the soul platform, actually self-realized people who understand what they are, what is even animating, what is even giving life to the mind and body in the first place, is the soul. So the intelligent, who really are using their mind and their body properly, they'll understand that, wow, if I'm not, because most people, what they're doing there is making the fundamental mistake of identifying with the mind and the body. I am this body, I am this mind, I am my thoughts. That's not who we are. We're the soul that's giving consciousness to all of those things. And so we have to actually learn what is the duty of the soul. And that'll come to know what is the relation, how did the soul even come into existence, what is its position. And that's ultimately, for that we should hear the message of the personality of Godhead, because it's the source of our soul, the source of our very soul. So we're going to get there. Prabhupada continues, because foolish people have no information of the soul and how it is beyond the purview of the body and mind, they are not satisfied in the performance of their occupational duties. Remember, the only thing that can completely satisfy the self is unmotivated and uninterrupted devotional service, or bhakti. The act of loving devotion unto that supreme whole. Why? Because that's the source of the soul. They're not satisfied in the performance of their occupational duties. The question of the satisfaction of the self is raised herein. The self is beyond the gross body and the subtle mind. He is the potent active principle of the body and mind. Without knowing the need of the dormant soul, one cannot be happy simply with the, you're going to have to Google this word, emolument. E-M-O-L-U-M-E-N-T. Emolument of the body and mind.
A salary, fee, or profit from employment.
What's that?
A salary, fee, or profit from employment. Profit.
Okay, so like profit. So simply, you're not going to be satisfied. One cannot be happy simply with the profits of the body and the mind. Because that's not who we are. It's like, actually he's going to give the example right here. I was just going to give this example, but I see it's right here. The body and the mind are but superfluous outer coverings. Why don't you Google superfluous as well? I think I know what it means, but superfluous outer coverings of the spirit soul. Ready?
Unnecessary, especially through being more than enough.
Unnecessary?
Unnecessary, especially through being more than enough.
Okay. So, they're but superfluous or unnecessary outer coverings of the spirit soul. The spirit soul's needs must be fulfilled. Simply by cleansing the cage of the bird, one does not satisfy the bird. One must actually know the needs of the bird himself. This is a great example. If you have a pet bird, or you are a bird, or or you're a human being, you could do the same thing. Imagine somebody, just wants to cleanse and make so pretty and decorate the cage of the bird, but they don't actually take care of the needs of the bird. They don't feed it, don't give it water, don't give it its needs for survival. The bird will not care. Ultimately, it will not be satisfied. Even though its cage is so beautiful, it's got the most decorated cage in all of existence, but if the bird doesn't get its needs taken care of, it's useless. It's a useless labor, so to say, like this verse said. Similarly, you can decorate yourself in all the nicest clothes, or someone can decorate you. Maybe you have a child, or you're a child, and your parents decide, I'll decorate you with the finest clothing articles. You'll have the finest decorations known to man. But if they starve you and they don't feed you and nourish you, and you'll die, what's the point? It's useless labor. So this is actually what almost everybody is doing. Useless labor, only in concern to the body and mind. What will give some temporary enjoyment to my body? What will give some temporary enjoyment to my mind? Not knowing what are the needs of the soul. And that's why we're always unsatisfied. To this point, we haven't found complete satisfaction. It's the unfortunate nature of everyone in this world. They're not completely satisfied. So they're always chasing something else, some other decoration of the body and mind, some other thing for the cage. But they're never actually addressing the need of the soul. And this is actually what we're here to do, is address the need of the soul. Prabhupada says, the need of the spirit soul is that he wants to get out of the limited sphere of material bondage and fulfill his desire for complete freedom. Complete freedom is the need of the soul. He wants to get out of the covered walls of the greater universe. He wants to see the free light in the spirit. The complete freedom is achieved when he meets the complete spirit, the personality of Godhead. There is a dormant affection for God within everyone. Spiritual existence is manifested through the gross body and mind in the form of perverted affection for gross and subtle matter. So spiritual existence is manifested through the gross body and mind in the form of the perverted affection for gross and subtle matter. So this is actually all coming from spiritual existence, but due to the lower natures of the material body and mind, the nature it's been designed is to pervert that original spiritual energy or existence and ultimately create affection for illusory things, which are gross and subtle matter. Therefore, we have to engage ourselves in occupational engagements that will evoke our divine consciousness. This is possible only by hearing, which you guys are doing right now, and chanting, which is I have the good fortune of doing right now, the transcendental message of Godhead. I want to help hearing and chanting the divine activities of the Supreme Lord. Sorry, I skipped a line. This is possible only by hearing and chanting the divine activities of the Supreme Lord. And any occupational activity which does not help one to achieve attachment for hearing and chanting the transcendental message of Godhead is said herein to be simply a waste of time. Why? Because it never takes care of the needs of the soul. It starves the bird and only decorates the cage. So anything else that you're doing in life, and I know you guys, you all have a bunch of duties you're doing, if it's not centered around this, it's going to be a waste of time at the end. So you have to make sure that's what this is about. Why are you going off all day doing your work? Why are you interviewing all day? Why are you studying all day? What is it really about? It should be about this, or it'll be simply a waste of time. This is because other occupational duties, whatever ism they may belong to, cannot give liberation to the soul. Even the activities of the Salvationists are considered to be useless because of their failure to pick up the fountainhead of all liberties, the source of all freedoms. The gross materialist can practically see that his material gain is limited only to time and space, either in this world or in the other. Even if he goes up to the Swargaloka, which is like the material heaven, he will find no permanent abode for his hankering soul. The hankering soul must be satisfied by the perfect scientific process of perfect devotional service. So this is talking about what's going to actually satisfy the soul. It isn't going to go, he talks about the Salvationists. A form of Salvationism, might be like the Christian thought, or even the Judeo or even Islamic thought, that once I please God, God will save me. He'll give me salvation. And in Islam they believe maybe they might get 72 virgins in heaven. In Christianity they'll get some paradise in heaven, which might mean whatever they can conceive of paradise. Maybe they're sitting by a beach in heaven, and I literally hear this by some of my like high school friends that, you know, a relative of theirs dies and they're like, oh, you know, I hope you're having a nice beer in heaven. I'm just thinking like, ah, yes, I'm sure that's what they're doing in heaven. This is the heavenly opulences. But they don't know. They don't have sufficient information of what actual paradise could look like. What's to speak of any information of the soul and what the soul needs in eternity? And actually, what is the soul? What is the true heavenly abode, the true kingdom of God that, say, Jesus was talking about, and these prophets who are pioneering these spiritual traditions are talking about? It's the kingdom of the Lord. It's above even the material heavens, where you can get all your material desires fulfilled. But what's the foundation of this place is perfect service to the Lord. Everyone is engaged in their service and relationship to the Lord. So this will all be explained. Next verse. Dharmasya hyapavargya. Dharmasya hyapavargyasya.
Dharmasya gyaparvargasya.
Narthorthayopakalpate. Narthasya dharmaikantasya.
Nathasya dharmakantasya.
Kamo labhaya hi smritaha.
Kamo labhai smritaha.
Dharmasya.
Dharmasya.
Occupational engagement.
Occupational engagement.
He. Certainly.
Certainly.
Apavargyasya.
Apavargasya.
Ultimate liberation.
Ultimate liberation.
Na.
Na.
Not. Arthaha.
Arthaha.
End.
And
Arthaya.
arthaya.
For material gain.
For material gains.
Upakalpate.
Upakalpate.
It is meant for.
Is meant for.
Is meant for. Na.
Na.
Neither.
Neither.
Arthasya.
Arthasya.
Of material gain.
Of material gains.
Dharma eka antasya.
Dharma eka antasya.
For one who is engaged in the ultimate occupational
For one who is
service. For one who is engaged in the ultimate occupational service. Kamaha.
Kamaha.
Sense gratification.
Sense gratification.
Labhaya.
Labhaya.
Attainment of.
Attainment of.
He.
He.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Smritaha
Smritaha.
is described by the great
Is
sages.
described by the great sages.
Translation. All occupational engagements are certainly meant for ultimate liberation. They should never be performed for material gain. Furthermore, according to sages, one who is engaged in the ultimate occupational service should never use material gain to cultivate sense gratification. So this is going to be very important. Prabhupada is saying, we have already discussed that pure devotional service to the Lord is automatically followed by perfect knowledge and detachment from material existence. But there are others who consider that all kinds of different occupational engagements, including those of religion, are meant for material gain. The general tendency, you see this, there's one preacher my dad watches sometimes, but even he knows that it's like cringy. His name is like Joel Osteen, and he does what's called prosperity preaching, where it's like, oh, you know, if you do this for the Lord will bless you with everything that you need and want out of life. He's like a Texas guy, and so, you know, but this is not what ultimately the ultimate goal of service to the Lord is. So they are saying that it's meant for material gain. The general tendency of any ordinary man in any part of the world is to gain some material profit in exchange for religious or any other occupational service. Like you go to work but you say, well, there should be a paycheck, right? You know, that's it. But service to the Lord should not be like that, actually. Even in the Vedic literatures, for all sorts of religious performances, an allurement of material gain is offered. In the Bhagavad Gita, this is talked about, the flowery words of the Vedas. The flowery words are, if you do this, you'll get this nice thing from this yajna, or from this thing or that thing. You want this thing? Worship this demigod. You want this thing? You could worship this demigod. But it's all actually all about material gain. But we have to go beyond that. Even in the Vedic literatures, all sorts of religious performances, an allurement of material gain is offered, and most people are attracted by such allurements or blessings of religiosity. Why are such so-called men of religion allured by material gain? Because material gain can enable one to fulfill desires, which in turn satisfy sense gratification. That's what it's all about. This cycle of occupational engagements includes so-called religiosity, followed by material gain, and material gain followed by fulfillment of desires. Sense gratification is the general way for all sorts of fully occupied men. But in the statement of Sutta Goswami, as per the verdict of the Srimad Bhagavatam, this is nullified by the present shloka. One should not engage himself in any sort of occupational service for material gain only, nor should material gain be utilized for sense gratification. How material gain should be utilized is described as follows. So, all occupational engagements, everything that we do should be certainly meant for ultimate liberation, for the ultimate freedom. What's that? And what is stopping us from that? Never be performed for material gain. I know a lot of you guys, you're in the field of interviewing for jobs and doing so many things. But it shouldn't be centered around, well, what's going to give me the most material gain? What's going to allow me to fulfill my material desires? That's what it's all about. That's why people want material gain. They want wealth, ultimately. Don't you notice all the great spiritualists? I've heard multiple, especially it's popular in Indian students, people come to me and they say, well, I want to make a lot of money and use it for God. And I say, yes. I think a couple of you have told me this before in the room. But ultimately, you don't need a lot of money to serve God. The Lord doesn't need any money for you to serve Him. What is it really about? It's not about that. You want something with that money that will fulfill your desires. That's all. That's why one chases. Don't you notice all the people who are serving God the most don't need any money? So this is the case. Even myself in the Grihastha ashram, I am bound to have to earn some money, and I see it. It can become addicting. It becomes intoxicating. It can ultimately destroy your spiritual life. And so many times Krishna had to personally check me many times in my endeavors for money. He personally does it, and He'll personally do it to you. So don't get to that point. Understand what it's all about. Understand that, fine, you have some desires, but this will never satisfy you. But you can chase them anyway, no problem. This is ultimately... Bhagavatam's tough. It's giving the highest thing, but at the same time, it's going to cut the illusions that we're living by. And there's so many of them. So Prabhupada's saying one should not engage himself in any sort of occupational service for material gain only, nor should material gain be utilized for sense gratification. If you do get material gain, that comes by karma. That comes by your past arrangements. There's no even use in endeavoring in this life for material gain. You'll get your karma. You've done so many things in past lives, and that it's coming. Whatever you deserve is coming. Fine. But how should it be utilized? Not for sense gratification. Even all our acharyas, they all came across certain elements of wealth. They didn't reject the wealth. They used the wealth in Krishna's service. But don't chase wealth. Stop this process. Chase devotional service. This will give you the real satisfaction you're looking for. Is that too hard for any of you? Are we sober? I know, it's about reading Bhagavatam stuff. It's not an easy thing. Ready? Kamasya nendriya priti labho jiveta yavata Jivasya tattva jigyasa
Jivasya tattva jignasa
Nartho yascheha karmabhi
Nato yasheha karmabhi
Kamasya
Kamasya
of desires
desires
Na
Na
not
not
Indriya
Indriya
senses
senses
Pritihi
Pritihi
satisfaction
satisfaction
Labhaha
Abha
gain
gain
Jiveta
Jiveta
self-preservation
self-preservation
Yavata
Yavata
so much so
so much so
Jivasya
Jivasya
of the living being
of the living being
Tattva
Tattva
the absolute truth
the absolute truth
Jigyasa
Jignasa
inquiries
inquiries
Na
Na
not
not
Arthaha
Arthaha
end
and
Yachaiha
Yachariha
whatsoever else
whatsoever else
Karma bihi
Karma bihi
by occupational activities.
by occupational activities.
Translation. Life's desires should never be directed towards sense gratification. One should desire only a healthy life or self-preservation, since a human being is meant for inquiry about the absolute truth. Nothing else should be the goal of one's works. So this is it right here. Prabhupada's saying, the completely bewildered material civilization is wrongly directed towards the fulfillment of desires and sense gratification. In such civilization, in all spheres of life, the ultimate end is sense gratification. In politics, social service, altruism. What's altruism again? Isn't that like... yeah, that's what I thought. But feel free to research it. Philanthropy, and ultimately in religion or even in salvation. You have altruism up.
the belief in a practice of disinterested and selfless concern for the well-being of others.
Okay. So trying to meet other people's needs, but ultimately it's always missing the spiritual need. So in politics, social service, altruism, philanthropy, and ultimately in religion or even in salvation, the very same tint of sense gratification is ever increasingly predominant. In the political field, the leaders of men fight with one another to fulfill their personal sense gratification. The voters adore the so-called leaders only when they promise sense gratification. As soon as the voters are dissatisfied in their own sense satisfaction, they dethrone the leaders. The leaders must always disappoint the voters by not satisfying their senses. The same is applicable in all other fields. No one is serious about the problems of life. Even those who are on the path of salvation desire to become one with the absolute truth and desire to commit spiritual suicide for sense gratification. But the Bhagavatam says that one should not live for sense gratification. One should satisfy the senses only in so much as required for self-preservation and not for sense gratification. Because the body is made of senses, which also require a certain amount of satisfaction, there are regulative directions for satisfaction of such senses. But the senses are not meant for unrestricted enjoyment. For example, marriage of the combination of a man with a woman is necessary for progeny, but it is not meant for sense enjoyment. In the absence of voluntary restraint, there is propaganda for family planning. But foolish men do not know that family planning is automatically executed as soon as there is search after the absolute truth. Seekers of the absolute truth are never allured by unnecessary engagements in sense gratification, because the serious students seeking the absolute truth are always overwhelmed with the work of researching the truth. That's actually very true. The serious students seeking the absolute truth are always overwhelmed with the work of researching the truth. In every sphere of life, therefore, the ultimate end must be seeking after the absolute truth. And that sort of engagement will make one happy because he will be less engaged in varieties of sense gratification. And what that absolute truth is explained as follows. So again, life's desires should never be directed towards sense gratification. But everybody you know, that's exactly what their desires are directed towards. Sense gratification. That means fine eating. That means fine use of the eyes, seeing pretty things, seeing nature and its beauty, seeing, hearing sweet songs, or this or that. so many things. The working senses, the pleasure of the tongue, belly, and genitals, all these things. I know myself, man. What could you say? You could say like,
Okay, I found this on the web for
No,
students
thank you.
seeking the absolute truth
Wow.
are always overwhelmed with the work of researching the truth.
Please, Siri, I don't want to hear your opinion on this whole thing. Sorry about that. So anyway, yeah, I know personally, generationally, we've struggled immensely with food addictions in my family, personally, and with that also comes sex addiction, because there's a straight line of how the senses work. If you fill the tongue enough, then the belly will be working enough, and you keep working the belly, then the genitals will become very strong and need to act. And so, like that, and it can be very problematic in so many people's lives. Actually, in this country, I mean, if you look at photos from the 1960s and 70s, like say a photo of people on the beach, you see maybe one larger person, you could say obese or larger person, amongst hundreds of seemingly skinny people. Now you go to that same beach all over the world, but especially in this country, you might see one skinny person amongst hundreds of obese people. Especially once you hit the age of like 30 or 35, and then everybody, is like this now. Why? It's simply due to we live in a society that directs people towards sense gratification, and what's that mean? They start eating more and filling the belly more and indulging in sex life more, and then the result is that we become vessels of lots of eating and sex, which are the ultimate sense gratifications. So actually, built into devotional service are all kinds of days and even times of the year. We've just entered Chaturmasya for checking this tendency. Even in devotional service, we see, we eat prasadam. And Prabhupada mentions nicely in Nectar of Instruction how important it is to fast on days like Ekadashi and Janmashtami and all these other days, because this helps check the sense gratification. Because don't think that just because we offered that food to the Lord that you are actually spiritually associating with that food in your own consciousness. You're still very attracted to it for sense gratification. This is the case, but it's better because it's now offered, and there's it also is spiritually infused. But still, we have to learn how to engage with these things, not in sense gratification. Wealth isn't bad. Food isn't bad. Nothing in this material world is bad. Your senses aren't bad. Your body isn't bad. Your mind isn't bad. How we use them is improper. But actually, it can all be used perfectly. It could all be perfect. How that will be explained as we go throughout the Bhagavatam here. But ultimately, it's going to go right back to the thing. What's the main thing that's going to completely satisfy the soul? Is unmotivated and uninterrupted service to the Lord. That means your senses used in that way, your wealth used in that way, your life and occupation used in that way is perfect. But for the opposite thing, it's very much imperfect, and it only causes you misery. You'll see this. It only causes you misery. I mean, one of the easy ways to this is get your facility for sense gratification. Unfortunately, I was one of those people who really prayed for all kinds of different things in life. In the beginning of my devotional life, I had material desires. And now I see Krishna fulfilling those desires, even though I might know better now, but he's fulfilled them. And I see ultimately this thing is causing me, misery. And it's no one's fault. Like for instance, many people My wife's back there. Many people want to get married. Many people want to own homes. Many people want to have all kinds of wealth and facility and all these things. And I'll tell you, so many complications come with these things that ultimately cause you misery. You're young. Well, Parth, you're only 3 years younger than me. Piyush, maybe. How old are you?
28.
28. Also only 3 years younger than me. Maybe 4, because I'm about to be 32. And Rishi, how old are you? 25. So I'll tell you, you're going to, in a few years, acquire these same things, because you also probably have desires for these things. But I'll tell you, they're not what you think they are. They're not what you think they are at all. And you will learn through pratyaksha, through direct experience, that actually your desires are causing you misery. Instead, it's the opposite of what you want. Everyone wants pleasure, and they think this will give me pleasure, but they get the opposite instead. So now I am in the process of trying to, I have a wife. How can we be engaged in devotional service? So you're seeing us try something here at the center. Okay, now a house is springing into our existence, and wealth is springing into our existence to some degree. How can we use these things in Krishna's service? So you're seeing that endeavor here. We're trying. But still the tendency is not that. The tendency is not to just do pure devotional service. The tendency is to want to direct everything towards sense gratification. But we must check this. How do we check this? Regularly hearing and chanting the message of Godhead. Just like you guys, the light bulb probably went off today by hearing Bhagavatam. Just by me repeating this, it's like a whole new light bulb for me as well. And I've heard this before. 3 or 4 or 5, 6, 10, 20, 30, 40 times. Doesn't matter. Keep hearing, keep chanting, keep taking in this message, because it purifies us. And I speak this to you now. This is why kirtan is so important. By me telling you this is an act of kirtan, right? So then if you see me go later and when it's time for prasadam and I'm so anxious to eat prasadam and enjoy prasadam, hey, weren't you just talking about how problematic this is? And then I'll be like, oh, yes, you're right. So this is actually the glories of kirtan. It makes you publicly available. That, hey, look, this is what we believe. This is the absolute truth. And then it helps, because others will then begin holding you accountable. Also, getting married is good for that too. You start telling her all these things, and then she notices when you don't when you don't live up to them. So I like this. I think we'll end here today, but we can talk about all these things over prasadam here online. You guys won't be here for the discourse, but thank you guys for joining. We'll continue doing this. I hope you can direct your lives towards service to the Lord, because that's what's going to make you ultimately happy. And I know the tendency is to do otherwise, towards gratifying the body and mind, but you are not your body and mind, you're a spirit soul. And I hope you can find that out for yourself, and I hope I can ultimately realize that myself as well. I know you guys as well. Thank you all. Hare Krishna, and we'll end here today.